Hi, you asked about speed bumps, so I'm going to answer that question. All right, here's everything that there is to know about speed bumps. First off, speed bumps were introduced by Mayor Bibb with ARPA allocations. If you recall, the city of Cleveland got $510 million in federal funds during COVID to help us shore up the accounts as we were losing money as a city. With some of that money, Mayor Bibb decided to install speed bumps on 100 streets citywide. And those in Old Brooklyn, in my old Ward 13, were on West 58th and Oak Park. And in Old Brooklyn, they were also on Tampa and Spring, which I now represent in the new Ward 4. So there were four streets in Old Brooklyn that got speed bumps out of the 100, and they were paid for with ARPA funds. So no money from the general fund was used to install any of these. They effectively didn't cost us anything. It was money we had to spend. Um, but as soon as they went up, we started learning a couple of things about speed bumps. One is that aside from getting calls from people who live on the street, either in favor or not liking the sound of them, I started getting calls from people on the street next to the street with speed bumps. So for Oak Park, that would be Portman. For 58th, that would be 57th Street. And essentially, people were calling to let me know that more traffic was coming down their street than previously. And it turns out that people that don't want to slow down for speed bumps will just use another road, which should have been fairly obvious to most of us. So I realized that while speed bumps might work very well on that street, they don't really solve the problem because people just go onto a different street, and now we just sort of move the problem from one place to another. Um, the other thing we learned right away was that trucks are not very fond of these. Garbage trucks, snow plows, and the reason we have the long ones and not the really short ones is so that a plow can get over it. But EMS ambulances aren't very fond of anything that goes up and down, especially if they have somebody with broken ribs in the back of their ambulance. They don't want to go like this. We found out that fire trucks, who the fire department considers their response time to be very closely related to survival rates when they're getting to an emergency, they're not very fond of them. The police were kind of out of it. They can kind of, go over them. That's fine. But any heavy equipment truck has to slow down quite a bit because of shocks, right? This will do more wear and tear on their vehicles. So we had to start thinking about that as well. The I got my notes right here. So then the popularity of the speed bumps themselves started to become an issue. So some people really love them and like them, and some people aren't very don't like them very much. They don't like the way they look, or they don't like them if they're in front of their house, reducing on-street parking, and also you can hear people going over them. Um, but what was interesting is that every single street in Old Brooklyn has at least one person, and sometimes a few people, that believe their street is in dire need of speed bumps for every safety reason you can imagine. And speed bumps do work where they're installed. They do actually slow down traffic on that street. So if you believe that speed bumps are needed on your street, you're joined by at least one person on every other street in the neighborhood. And this leads to a clear problem. We can't put them on every single street. We'll talk about money in a second, but it would create, a reduced response time for all of our first responders, and that's really not something I think people want to accomplish. I think we want first responders to be as quick as possible. Uh, but money. So I told you that the first 100 were installed with ARPA funds, which did not come out of our general fund. When I asked the administration, how do we expect to pay for these moving forward, their first answer was take it out of the streets budget, the resurfacing budget. So let's back up and talk about that a little bit. The city of Cleveland every year allocates a certain amount of money to each ward to repave streets that need it. And it's about $600,000 a year on average. And every single year in February, when city council does the city's budget, we try to increase that amount. The way the budget is done quickly is that the mayor submits an estimate, a proposal, and then city council looks at that and decides where to make changes and passes a final. And every year we fight to get more money in street resurfacing because we know it's really important to residents. So we usually try to bump it up to 800,000 or so. And if we have to take money out of that for speed bumps, then we're ultimately just resurfacing fewer streets. There's not an infinite amount of money to go around. Speed bumps cost about $7,000 to $8,000 each. It begs the question of when do you even put them in? Do you put a speed bump on a street that's about to be resurfaced? And this has already happened, where the city has installed speed bumps and then just 2 or 3 years later tore up that entire street to resurface it, and the speed bump's got to go too. To only have to pay for it a second time. We're not really trying to be wasteful like that. So the issue of putting speed bumps on streets that are being resurfaced seems to be a best practice. But where do we put them? Back to the first 100. The city had a lot of data on which streets were used most, and which streets had the highest rate of people speeding. We do traffic counts. There's little boxes. You put them on poles. The traffic commissioner does this, and we get a count of how many cars go up and down that street and how fast they're going. So um, I like data, and I like to use objective data and measures when we can to make decisions. So I have asked the streets department and the traffic commissioner to put one of those boxes on every single street in Old Brooklyn. Let's count every single street and find out which ones are high and which ones are low and which ones have more people speeding on them and which ones have fewer, so that we can actually, objectively and fairly evaluate which streets need speed bumps the most. Which we're doing, but it's not going to happen very quickly because we've only got about 20 of those boxes. And while you can go on a map and look at the ones that have already been studied in Old Brooklyn, you'll see quickly that it's not every street. And I've asked them to do every street, but it's going to take some time to get that back. In the meantime, there is at least one person on every street that believes they need it. And then there are people that don't like them as well. So it's a bit of it's kind of a headache, but what we don't want to do is start throwing speed bumps all around the place and then tell everybody to just deal with it, end up tearing some of them up a few years later when the street gets resurfaced. And we're ultimately not solving the problem of people that don't want to follow the speed limit. I do have a solution for that. The solution is to hire cops to ticket them. The Cleveland Police Department right now is short-staffed, about 200. We approve a budget every year, and every year that I've been on council, for 1,350 police officers, and we have less than 1,200, probably about 1,060, maybe 75 right now. But if we had those missing 200 police officers that are in the budget, that are paid for, that are absolutely, their money's there, then we would have about 20 more officers per district. There are 5 districts in Cleveland. And those 20 officers could be assigned to traffic duty, and we could start ticketing people who are speeding. And I think that making the people that are causing the problems pay the price for their behavior is the easier way to get people to start following laws. It's also revenue for the city that's not lost on me. And at the end of the day, I think that's what's going to work. If you've gotten a speeding ticket, it might have, ruined your day or week, but it might have also gotten you to think about how fast you're driving. And if you live in Old Brooklyn like I do, and you ever drive into Parma, you know that as soon as you cross Brook Park Road, you're going 25 miles an hour because they always have a cop there, and that cop's always pulling someone over. And so, I mean, traffic enforcement works. It just does. So that is, I think, everything there is to be said on speed bumps. Checking my notes. Yeah, that's it. So we're working on it. We're trying to figure out how to do it the right way. And I'll answer any questions you got. You can email me, kharsh@clevelandcitycouncil.gov. That's KHARSH at clevelandcitycouncil.gov. Thanks.